Again, thank you so much for attending this multi-generational recruiting webinar. I had a aha moment of saying, hey, recruiting has changed over the years, and I wanted to go out, find the best of the best, and each generation that I respect. So we have a panelist that has done so many cool things within this recruiting industry, and they have shaped how recruiting is currently right now. So there's a lot of insight, a lot of things that you guys can learn from every single generation that's here. So please ask questions. Please understand other people's perspective and where recruiting is going, because we are the ones that are shaping it for the future. So love to go around, introduce you, tell you a little bit about who the speakers are, and then we can do some questions. So who wants to go first?
Well, you organize this. You can choose. Make a
Sure.
decision. You're at the generation. Make a decision.
How about we go Jerry first?
Yeah, that sounds good. That always shuts up Steve for at least 2 minutes. So
That's right.
Good. So yeah, I've been recruiting since let's see, 1972. I started in career services, helping kids find jobs. In 75, I started with Johnson and Johnson, and so I was recruiting since 1975 in a corporation. Just saying.
I guess it's my turn. And like Jerry and I both have something. Both of us were engineers who essentially crossed over to the dark side. I've been recruiting for 37 years now. When I started, there were the applicant tracking system was a Rolodex and a file cabinet.
That's a new question.
It is, and you know what we did? These things we didn't use. We used our fingers to actually dial a phone, not to use our thumbs to text messages.
Amy, how about you?
Amy?
All right. Guess I know where I rank in the age category now. No. So I too came of age in the 1900s and got into recruiting in 1998. My boss had a computer, but I did not. I was very jealous. So I would have to like beg him for 5 minutes to type my little ads using my fingers, Steve, to type my ads that I would fax over to the Seattle Times to get people to walk into my office and fill out a paper application. So it has shifted a lot. So about, I don't know, a decade in agency, decade in corporate. Just now I'm just tired.
Mr. Fink?
Oh, I like how you're inferring that I'm the next oldest here. Thank you so much.
Brian,
I appreciate
you are Brian.
Mm-hmm. I know.
There's no inference involved.
Yeah. So, hey guys and gals, my name is Brian Fink. I'm a technical recruiter at McAfee. I am excited to be here and represent the younger portion of Gen X as opposed to my elder statesmen. And I am, yeah, I know. I was looking to spill some tea, get that fired up. All right. And I guess that means that I will kick it over to, do I kick it over to Dan or do I kick it over to Kayla? Because we know Dan is kind of old.
I guess I represent the millennials, where we always think everything gets handed to us and we always complain. So
well, that's why I handed it to you. That's why I handed it to you. I didn't want to not hand it to you.
That's great.
Kayla, how about you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kayla. I'm a technical recruiter with Reliable Robotics. I've been in the industry since 2021. So I came in the thick of all of the craziness, and I started out in R4R. So I exclusively hired recruiters the first year and a half of my career. And now I've moved into the corporate space. I think I'm supposed to be here to represent the Gen Z, but I'm actually just a really young millennial. I don't quite identify with the Gen Z side of the house, but I do work with a lot of people who are in that category. So I'm familiar with it, but I had to teach some of my coworkers that Gwen Stefani was in a band before she was out on her own the last holiday party. So that was my kind of signal that I don't think I'm a Gen Z.
Kayla, do you also have to explain the movie 10 Things I Hate About You? And no, I
I
don't mean
have
that
to
in a negative
explain
way.
that to people. I have to
That's-
explain that to people.
Do you really? And how no doubt they were playing on the okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
I
Well,
have to
let's get
explain
down.
Goonies a lot. That hurts.
Let's get down to the topics of recruiting and how it's shaped through generation to
No,
generation.
no, no. Let's make fun of Steve for being old.
Right, I missed. I didn't hear that. What was that, Brian?
Do you have an? Oh, never mind. I'm not. I was about to drop the
He
first
just
F-bomb of
thinks
the
he's
morning.
old.
Somebody's got to break the seal. Do it, Frank. Do it. You know
Do
it's
it,
going to be
Frank.
Gen X.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. You have questions. Steve has answers.
Jerry, let's start with you. How do you think from you starting and kind of shaping what recruiting is as a whole and a specific role in a function in a career, how is that shaped from when you started to now?
There's a quick answer to that question. In my era, there was no career in recruiting, none whatsoever. The career was, if you're going to have it, was human resources, and there was a side issue where you got to go learn recruiting, so you got to go do that for a while. And the reason, which I'm sure we can get into some degree, but just the short thing is, there really wasn't a hell of a lot that you were doing relative to sourcing. Because the primary source, the dominant source, were two newspapers in every city in the United States. And fundamentally, there was a mechanism for which you would get your ad into that. There's a little bit of nuance there, but fundamentally, the thing that attracted me was the problem that still exists, which is how we make decisions and the issues around selection and assessment, both by employers as well as by folks coming into the candidates, still is really the choke point for what we need to improve. And fundamentally, that was the only area that really required a lot more focus, not just from art, but from science.
You know, to that point, and Jerry, correct me if I'm really wrong on this one, but much of the early work on the assessment stuff came from AT&T, and there was like I think it was Mary this obscure crossword puzzle shit I know. Mary Tenneper was the one who I think for them helped pioneer the assessment center concept. But to this day, to your point, it's really difficult to enhance assessment when most of our profession doesn't even know what the real job is.
Yeah, there's still a lot of issues that exist in this whole area, but I will tell you that there was an acceptance on the part of candidates that it took time
Oh,
for you to engage and respond when they were concerned about jobs. And in the era of the dinosaurs, professionals would get the Sunday newspaper on Saturday, the classified section. They would send before basically the mailman left on Saturday. You would be able to get out 20 or 30 different resumes in envelopes, and you would have an expectation that they would be filled in several different weeks. I got to tell you, the expectations of today, I would suspect, are way different in relation to what a candidate would hope you would be able to respond to. And yet at J&J, we would send out probably 2,000 postcards and letters a week,
yeah.
keeping people up to date on the status of their effort. What craziness that was, and what a sad state we are in today in terms of that kind of just keeping status available to folks that are interviewing.
Yeah.
Jerry, how did the postcard thing work? Like, this is
You never heard of that?
No. I'm the guy who bleached all the fax machine paper. I'm not the guy who sent a postcard.
At J&J, we
No,
had a pool, a plastic looking, pool, kiddie pool, in the center of the office. And on Tuesday, I would get at least 2 times during the course of a day, a male person would come in with a huge sack and pour it into that plastic pool. And I had 4 people that came from community on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they would open every envelope. They would stack, and on the outside of an envelope was the rec number.
Mm-hmm.
And you would stack by rec number all of those envelopes, thousands of them, into stacks of like about 100. And the recruiters would basically pull their stack and begin scanning into 2 piles. One is yes, and the other is no or maybe.
Yeah.
And if you have enough yeses, you never went back to the no's and maybes.
Maybes. And by the way, the scanning was
By the end of the day, the stacks of no's and maybes go back to that central area, and a postcard that says, "Thank you very much, we got your resume," would go out.
and by the way, the postcard was hand lettered.
I'm just saying, it was. Listen, this was a different world, and a lot of people don't get it because we've never really had to think about that. But it was a machine that just obviously dealt with that on a day-by-day basis. And some companies, like J&J, were committed to ensuring that every single person that applies had some status at least every month, but 1 is the initial status. And then when we closed, and that was a postcard, but when we said we're not going forward with you, that would go in an envelope so that you wouldn't see that on the outside. Does that make sense?
Okay, that was I was a little worried about that. Like,
Yeah.
like
there's envelopes. So now we're
Okay.
spending more money with an envelope to
Yeah.
say, I'm sorry, we're not going forward with you.
I mean,
so
these
you
are like
wanted the postcard. You did not want the envelope. Got it.
correct. I mean, these are like brown paper envelopes coming from Amazon with stuff in them that you don't want anybody to see.
Mm.
But it was like that.
So this explains to me why people want to make sure their email is finding you well.
Yeah, I mean, think about
Jerry's
the
swimming in a
bullshit.
pool of postcards.
Think
I
about
know.
the bullshit we do today is really, a digital version of some of that, if we're doing that at all.
And in fact, there was an inordinate amount of file cabinet of closet space.
Oh, that's another story.
But it was true. But it was a highly manual process of putting those in order.
I had a room as big as this, what you see behind me, with file cabinets and drawers in those file cabinets of all of the resumes that we committed to keeping for 5 years of resumes. And think about how they're ordered. They're ordered in terms of how the recruiter figured out that these are people we would go back on in chemistry or in whatever, versus those that we'll never deal with again. So they get filed that way. So they're not in alphabetical order. So if you wanted to know if Brian Fink ever applied to J&J, you'd have to go through 100,000 resumes in file cabinets.
So let me flip the script here for a quick second. I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to cut you.
No. What I was going to say, I want to just real quick, Kayla, what's your reaction to hearing this?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
I'm just thinking about all the postage still. That's kind of where my mind, because like I got married a couple years ago and doing the like 50 invites was enough for me, like getting envelopes ready. So I'm imagining having to do like hundreds of these a week, but just like the inability to go back and see the candidates who are interested in your company when that role does open, like that is a whole different level of like sourcing that my brain is really struggling to comprehend, like going through all these paper resumes.
Oh yeah.
And you
So
mentioned
the cost, you know, you might think about the postage, but on the other hand, you got to think about the fact that you've got an ATS that's supposed to help you do some of that, plus whatever else you've attached to that ATS, and that cost is not simple either.
So, but
Amy?
here's what's crazy, right? Like the underlying process has not changed. We
No.
still have recruiters who are in their ATSs looking at resumes in the order that they come in. Typically, there may be some other filtering or stack ranking depending on the organization and the recruiter's personal decisions. But we are doing that. Quick yeses go here, quick nos go there, quick maybes go over there to revisit if the yeses weren't enough. We're doing the exact same work. We're just doing it faster and with technology.
Even so, Amy, think
Not
about
necessarily
this
faster.
from that perspective, from this perspective you're talking about, and that is where you have your big source, right? That's the you know, the ad in the newspaper on Sunday. So fundamentally, if that didn't work, if you did not get enough of a stack, now you have to consider what? Research? Well,
Flyers on
companies
cars.
companies like
Well, yes.
so J&J and many of the large companies would be embarrassed to have somebody internally doing sourcing. So there were very few researchers in large companies. That's when you hired, obviously, the staffing folks to do that for you. So
Well-
sourcing was outsourced for the most part for the few jobs that you could not get sufficient response from a Sunday ad.
There was a small community. Jerry, you may remember the name Ken Cole.
Yeah.
Ken Cole put out, well, there was, back in the days, there was the Red Book and there was the White Book. The Red Book was by Kennedy Publications, and it listed all the recruiting firms by sector, by level, by stuff. Brian, it was bigger than your book. It was massively big.
We're not here for comparisons.
No, we're not. We're not
I'm
doing
comfortable with the size of my book. I mean,
it's quality, not quantity. I get it. But there was also Ken Cole had a book called the Directory of Executive Researchers. And it was a small, almost illicit group of people who did things like this. You know, there was a fellow. I mean, I ran into a guy named Gil Simon. I mean, if you think of the most, of a PI crossed with, the most gnomish character you've ever thought of, that's what these people did. They could call in. They were maestros with getting people to give up information. The other part,
their research was all based on books and directories.
Yes.
Obviously, Kayla, there was nothing called digital.
Nothing at all. And in fact, there was an underground business of the selling of corporate employee directories.
Mhm.
Yes, literally a physical, people would take the employee directories with the phone numbers and sell them. And there were a large number of large companies suing some of these people.
Sure.
So I have a question. Do you think the candidate experience was better when technology wasn't in place, or do you think technology has gotten better with technology?
There was
And
no
both
concern
sides.
about the candidate whatsoever.
I have a theory as to why.
Okay.
Well, the
Who
point
are
is
they going to tell?
Right. One is there's no pushback, right?
I think I'll go onto LinkedIn. I'll go onto LinkedIn right now. Oh, I'm sorry.
There
To
was
do
no
that in the 1900s.
and that what we were doing was simply what was started in the early 1900s, which is you line them up. You basically take what you can, you hire the person, and then you say everybody disperse, and we'll start all over again. And unfortunately, too many companies today do exactly the same thing.
I mean, what we've really done with the technology, we have substantially automated stupidity.
Well, we've automated the process that's always been there, which is seriously flawed.
Yeah.
It's always seriously flawed.
That's why.
People are constantly trying to push back against that, but it's embedded, back to the early stages of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, there was never mind. There's too many stories with too many of those things. So
We just need like a Jerry fireside chat, like just
no, I
Jerry
don't want to
telling
do that.
stories.
No,
I
No,
would
we're
sign
having
up.
that, we're having that in December, right? The Hire Easy is putting on 12 days of Jerry Claus.
I love
I
that.
think that would be a good idea.
That's
I
all
think
I want
more
for Christmas, Jerry.
importantly, here's the important issue for all of us from a generation point of view is we now do have an opportunity to make this a career, not just a job.
Yeah.
Not just a job that you're in and then you go to another job in which you're selling something else. The fact of the matter is, this is a career for most of us. I've spent 50 years in it. I love recruiting. I don't want to leave recruiting feeling that the public would perceive recruiting about the same as they perceive politicians. I would rather they perceived it more like nurses, like it's a great profession that makes a difference. Yeah. And most of us that know each other make an effort to do it in a way that makes a difference for the people that we deal with.
Yeah.
But I think we need, as an industry and a profession, to focus on how do we get our peers and colleagues to step up so that we are all moving in the right direction relative to providing feedback and or providing closure and or making better decisions along the way and holding our hiring managers and others accountable.
So maybe that's a good question for Kayla here, is that, Kayla, since you are the closest one to being a digital native, how do you feel that technology has empowered us to deliver a better candidate experience and a better recruiting experience?
Or let me, before you ask, also ponder, how would you...
Let her take one question at a time, Steve.
Well, you don't have to wait for the mail to come. There's that. So, you're going to get your answer right away. Even if you're calling someone, you don't have to worry if they're on their computer, right? Because their internet's not going to be blocked up. I do remember that. I was back in the day of dial-up. But yeah, I think it's allowed us to really improve it, simply because the time in which we can get back to a candidate. The flip side of that is the candidate's expectations, I think, have probably changed significantly because they know all I have to do is send an email, right?
Bingo.
But they don't see that I have, 30, 40, 50 emails to send out in that day, and I want to tailor all of them to make sure everyone is getting the best experience.
Absolutely. So basically, with every improvement we're making, the expectations are also increasing at the same or even higher pace. And I think that's the struggle. So the big takeaways for me so far are nothing's really changed about the process. And secondly, it is a people problem at its heart. This is a group, I've met every single one of you in real life except maybe Dan, and we will fix that. But I know this is an amazing group of people that I would recruit alongside any day of the week. But I also know that we all know people who should not be in this industry. That is the heart of the problem, not technology, not recruiting as a profession. All of that stuff is what it is. It's driven by people, for better or worse.
Right.
Amy.
I commonly, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
No, Kayla, go for it.
Oh, I commonly think of recruiting very similar to real estate. You look at it at face value, everyone's like, oh, I can do this. But I've worked with a really bad realtor and I've worked with a really good realtor. And first day with my really good realtor, I bought my house. So that's kind of how I see recruiting. Anyone can look at it at face value and say, I can do this, but can you do it well?
And I will tell you, Kayla, that the one big difference between real estate and recruiting is you need a license if you're in real estate.
And houses don't talk back.
You don't need shit for, to be a recruiter. You can put that shingle out anytime you want. And fundamentally, there's a lot of people who do. There's a lot of opportunities, and that's what it gives you, a lot of opportunity, if you will, to try your hand at it.
Hmm.
The problem is if you're not really doing a lot of the things that we think are important to do, you're not encouraged necessarily to leave. You could still make money.
But Jerry, this goes back to the conversation that you and I had at Unleash or Transform about a year or so ago, that I believe that recruiters should be licensed in a state by I mean, look at this hair, okay? I mean, somebody had to get a license to cut it, right? We see what can go horribly wrong, Steve, with someone who doesn't have that license to do it. And we are dealing with people's lives and their livelihoods and their family having just a monstrous impact when we're negligent.
Here's my
I
concern
agree
though.
with you,
You're gonna
but
get people who know how to take tests. I don't know how to take, I'm a terrible test taker. Like we won't get into my neurodivergency, but I would fail. And that's my concern with something like that.
but I hear you, and obviously the test or whatever could be very different. That isn't, that isn't a test of knowledge. I will tell you, Brian, I would agree with it if I was in almost any other country, because it's likely that you need those kinds of certifications. But in this country, in our society, you don't do it for coaches, as long as they call themselves coaches, right? Not counselors. So
Very good point.
we have, I do think there might be an opportunity for a professional license that you can demonstrate that you can do things, which for Amy is very different than knowing something. But if you demonstrate that you could do something and could get certified by that, and that we held that as pretty cool,
Yeah.
then I think a lot of people would do it. But that would take a collective change in how we approach things. I think that initially, I would love to be able to say that this is the place, if there were a place where the body of knowledge of recruiting resided.
Mm.
There is no one place that you can go to where you could say all that we need to know about recruiting is captured here and upgraded as necessary as it evolves, so that people can see what baseline issues were and what best practices could look like. And if we could do that, that would be incredible.
So that
And we don't do that. The best that you get is in HR, and that their chapter on recruiting in
Much
any
smaller than that.
is a little bit too limited.
all right, so real quick, Dan, I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but
Oh,
there
you're
was a
good.
really nice
Keep it. It's good
there was a
conversation.
there was a really nice comment that was made by Christy Bellingham, that until recruitment is given a seat at the C-suite table, nothing will change. We generationally, we've seen the CHROs promoted to being the consigliere to the CEO. That's been my experience. I'm wondering, how has that evolved, or is that evolving, or is it still a work in progress? Because I also think that recruiting should report into legal.
Why not just have recruiting record into marketing or sales or engineering? It's
Because Jerry disagrees with me there, so I've decided that I want.
Why not have recruiting report to the CEO? Why don't we have a chief recruiting officer who's actually been in the trenches, knows how to do it, didn't come from operations, didn't come from sales, like somebody who actually knows recruiting. Recruiting needs to be an equal function with every other business function. That's what I want to see in the C-suite. Don't have to report to some other business. Have to report to the CEO.
So since legal is a cost center, I thought you would put us with them, because we're looked at as a cost center as opposed to a revenue engine, which is what my argument to Jerry was, is that why we should be put with sales. But he has refuted that several times.
No, nobody
Fine.
generates
My
revenue if
argument.
we don't hire them to do it.
100%.
so
I just think
so
that
here's
there's a problem with every one of the
Mhm.
pieces, and there's an advantage, because obviously whoever you report to, that's the focus that we're going to have, but it's also potentially the problem in terms of how it's going to look. Under legal, there's a compliance issue. Under sales, they could be selling the body in the seat without considering the human. Just get a buy. So there's a lot of issues. But I think that I go with Amy. I think that the quality of the head of TA should be such that the CEO, if it doesn't report to the CEO is really interested in what that TA leader has to say
Absolutely.
during the times that TA is demonstrating that their success leads to greater success for the business itself. And so there are periods of time when TA could be more important, and it's the TA leader who is going to elevate, if you will, what we're doing in relation to what the business is doing.
That requires a special kind of person.
Yep.
It does.
And so
No,
here's
it
the deal.
does. It
But
does.
Brian, you remember when I did my Courageous Sorcerer keynote a couple of years back?
I
Brian?
do. And real quick, I know I was silent for a minute. It was amazing. Real quick, I just want to let everybody know there are people who are making wonderful comments, but they're only making it to the hosts and the panelists. Make sure if you're making some of these wonderful comments in the chat that you're sharing it with the full audience.
Yeah.
Steve, I remember your Courageous Sorcerer speech in Austin, Texas. Tell me more.
This is, we can talk about, it's irrelevant where the position reports to. What's more relevant is the individual behind it. And the ability to not cower amongst in the weight of a CFO just slamming you with irrelevant cost per hire crap.
Right.
We talk about being a talent advisor. And this is the one thing I've learned through the years is to, be far less of an arrogant asshole and more of a, let's use these two ears and listen to what's being said, and often saying less. But when things are said, it's stuff that will 100% resonate with that person who is your audience.
Sure.
And in order to do that, this is part of, Jerry, what our original Lenona's one of the original Lenona conversations about ATAP was, what does it take to be a truly influential talent advisor? Number one, and this is geared towards the the lower age groups, and this is completely borrowed from Jerry, who everywhere he goes, he refers to himself as a lifelong learner. If you aren't learning something every day, you messed up. And it could be about a technique, it could be about a function, it could be about an industry, it could be about politics, it could be about social causes, whatever it might be. The very best in this profession, the ones who in fact are the consiglieres of the CEOs, are the ones who, quite frankly, could do their job.
And that transcends all generations. Like if you have the person, and this is why Kayla is such a phenomenal recruiter, even just a few years in, because she took the time to like really understand how the pieces fit together. She found the right mentors. She aligned herself to the right, partnerships, like that learning mentality. Like none of this other stuff ultimately really matters. The technology is going to change. The candidate experience is going to be up and down. It's going to be all over the place, but recruiters have to be intensely curious, start to finish every day.
And this is how they use it. I'd like to make one more comment relative to this. There's a second piece to this, and that is, as you learn, there's got to be a willingness to step up and take risks. And fundamentally, I see most of the people in this room and most of the people that I spend time talking to are people who are fearless, unafraid to make their position known because they now have experience, they've been listening, they've got some data. It may be anecdotal, but they know the difference between anecdotal and serious data. So they know how to put it forward and are fearless in doing so. And I do think that we need more of that. We need to teach recruiters at every level, but particularly those in the trench, to learn their job well enough so that when they're sitting with the hiring manager, they are an equal.
Yeah.
They're not a supplicant going in trying to figure out what he or she wants, but they're a business partner with that hiring manager, and their view of the company they've learned may be beyond just what the hiring manager is looking for. And I tell you, every recruiter that I admire today, folks like Amy and others, and Brian and others that I see on a regular basis, are very clear about those and paying it forward in terms of how they share that information with others.
Can
So
I, can I,
I think
there's
Go
something
for
for Kayla, just real good. That little time we spent together when I showed you a couple of things, you
Mhm.
couldn't wait. You couldn't wait to get me off, so you could try these things for yourself. And
I did
and so
spend the
I'm
rest of my day in there. Like,
and that
Yeah.
is something, that rabidness for learning.
yes.
right.
Do you think it's different from every generation though? Because I don't think that was always
Yes.
like that. Because maybe the older generation was, hey,
Yeah,
I know what
get
I'm
me
doing
out
and
of
I'm
this.
not going to share.
Get me out of recruiting fast. It's just a goddamn machine. It does it this way. Let me get back into HR where I can, learn about comp or whatever.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a big shift since the 90s. And fundamentally, the nuance, the complexity, the technologies, all of those things have created opportunities, particularly as we look at scaling,
Yeah.
that you can pay a head of TA for a major company a serious amount of money. And so anywhere along that ramp, you should be in reasonably good shape compared to other types of professions. It's not perfect like anything, but still, that's why it has changed.
What
So
do you
here's, I
think?
think,
Go ahead.
I want to add real quick, Daniel. I think this is also where divide can also hurt us, because I know when I was early in my career, Kayla, you don't have to tell us any specific stories, but I imagine you've maybe felt this to a certain degree as well. Like, not only as a woman, but as a young woman, who am I to tell a engineering leader twice my age how to recruit or how to hire or what's important about interviews? So there's also that underlying generational piece, and I think we've all experienced it at some point in our career. But that's where I see even the best of the kind of new generation of millennial and Gen X or Gen Z, or I don't know what generation we're on anymore, as they're coming up, no matter how good they are, there is still that barrier. Like, how do we get leadership, significantly older, significantly more experienced, to like, shut up and listen?
Yeah,
I think
Duct tape
it-
works.
Not
it's
saying I've
insane
never tried
because
that.
the
it is.
millennial Gen
Look,
Z and
there is an imposter syndrome that we all have.
Sure.
And I remember, when I was first at J&J and I was teaching supervisors how to supervise, and I had never supervised. I literally got sick before I got involved with any of that, because I had no real stories about doing that. And I
Yeah.
knew that I was an imposter. All I had was book knowledge. And so fundamentally, it takes time, but it takes persistence. The point is,
Sure.
I never gave up. I kept on trying to learn, so that I would be able to go just a step further the next time. And I think that's the difference between most of us and those recruiters who, by and large, are not getting anywhere, is that they're not willing to step up and be more persistent in relation to that.
I had a question. So part of the looking down on the younger generation is they quote unquote job hop. But do you think it's because that's a population that's wanting to learn and wanting to grow and influence the leaders of saying this is a new way of recruiting of how we do it. And if they're not getting that, then they jump ship to another job, because 20, 30 years ago, you stayed at a company for 10 years. Now, with the globalization of access to other opportunities with technology, there's more opportunities out there, which means more learning. And if you're not getting fed, you're going to go somewhere where you're getting fed. What's your thoughts on that?
So
Or Kayla,
what
maybe.
Yeah, Kayla.
I have a strong opinion on this one. I don't really see like job hopping as a terrible thing. It's normal. You stay, your equity vests, you leave. You go on to learn something new, expand your skill set. The other thing, and I've talked about this with a lot of my friends, and I've talked about it with my father-in-law as well. We don't get pensions. And pensions would help you stay somewhere. They would retain that talent. I don't even know what a pension is. I would have no idea how one works at this point, because I've never been offered one. It's not been something that is there for me. But what I have been offered at multiple jobs is equity in the company. So you'll see a lot of companies then, to try to retain, they'll offer additional equity grants. That sometimes can be more valuable than the first. But I really think a lot of it comes down to like that huge piece of compensation. I'm responsible for my own retirement now, where you used to be able to get a pension.
Absolutely.
I will say that that's a wonderful point of view, which I share 100%. When I started with J&J, it was 10 years to vest
Yes.
for a pension,
Mm.
and legally in the United States, you could do 20 years.
Yes.
And when I was in career services at Stevens Institute of Technology, I had people coming to me, and I remember it clearly, from Raytheon, with 19 years as an engineer working at Raytheon, and he was let go in a recession. He got nothing.
Yeah.
After 19 years.
Yeah.
And that was a light bulb that went on in my head in the early 70s, that nobody's going to be paying attention to me. I have to take responsibility for my own.
Mhm.
And after pensions disappeared and got 401ks, of course, you have more responsibility. And so the first time that people think about that, then yeah, if I'm not getting what I need to grow, then I'm going to be moving to the next spot.
Mhm.
And nobody should have a problem with that. And the companies that say you're a job hopper, I'm not going to hire you, that's their problem,
It's their problem.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's not just ours. It's all of us who are involved. Most of us who are involved in recruiting. We go deeper than that date level.
Mhm.
We always say there. I know everyone. I want to know the story.
Yeah.
If I want to know, structure begets function. I want to see how your career house has been built. If things make sense, look. I just don't like the color in my room. I'm going to paint it over again. I know I just repainted it last year. So what? I don't like the color. That's okay.
I think
And
everybody should be stepping back every year to 2 years, but no less than a year, no more than 2 years, and asking yourself, how have I grown, and can I use this to make more of a difference here, or should I be going somewhere else? I think our approach to careers should be very different than it was many years ago, Kayla. And I absolutely agree with what you're doing.
I got a question.
Yeah.
How does one learn? You said you're a lifelong learner. How do you learn from the younger generation right now? Maybe Brian, Steve, Amy, Jerry. Like what are you learning from the younger generation currently?
Well, my daughter taught me about TikTok. She's only 8, but no, okay. So in all transparency, about 10 years ago, there was a young lady that I hired as an intern. Her name is Sarah Everett. She's in charge of corporate comms at Intuit today. And every time that we would sit down for a one-on-one, I would ask the question, what can I be doing to move at the pace you move at? All right. She's the one who introduced me to Evernote. She's the one who introduced me to Slack. Have that conversation. And she was like, Brian, it's like I'm reverse mentoring you. And I was like, no shit, right? So that is there is, if you are like what Jerry said, if you are a lifelong learner, that you are dedicated to getting information from all different outlets that's possible and probable, and then deciphering that on your own. If you've got that curiosity, that empathy, that tenacity, or like I like to say, if you've got Steve Levy's mischievousness, then you can go far and you can learn from a younger generation.
You never said that to me, Brian. You
Nice.
just made
This is
that.
a
You made
beautiful moment.
yes. It's a.
I say that all the time. I said that at SourceCon.
You just never. You never. The word. It's
I had a picture
mischievous
of you.
work. It's the
I'm so glad this
mischievous
is
stuff.
recorded.
Brian has been giving you more compliments than you deserve, Steve. It's good. It's good. Just
Oh,
take it.
Jerry. Okay, Jerry.
Compliments as hair eyes I have on my head.
I think a little advice for the participants here is if you're not already doing it and you're not on the interview team for recruiters,
Yeah.
whether it's for your team or not, ask to be on those interview teams, because you can ask the upcoming recruiters coming into your organization of how they're recruiting, what's the best tech talent or tech stack you're working in, what tools are you using. And by you asking that, and they're going to give you the best answer of how they recruited, because it's an interview. They're going to give you the best of the best knowledge, and then you could take away and store that in your playbook for
Yeah.
future execution. So I always try to do that, of being on that and just learn from people that are coming in, whether you're going to hire them or not.
Great.
And
Great suggestion. Go ahead, Amy.
I think it was Kayla. Go. And then I'll follow.
I would push back, like if you can get involved in those, do it, because I started in R4R, and I learned so much from the people I was interviewing, and like I carried some of those experiences, many of them actually, to my current role.
I tell you what, it's something I've learned from the younger generation and the recruiters who are like my kids' age, which is a weird phenomenon. I report to a millennial who's absolutely amazing, and what I have learned is the importance of putting myself first. So not in a selfish way, not in a like, I don't care about my candidates or hiring managers way, but in a way of like, I don't have to bleed out for my company. I don't have to sacrifice everything on the altar of serving my employer. It is okay to take breaks. It is okay to job hop if that's what's putting me in a better position financially, mentally, emotionally, whatever. 20 years ago, I didn't know that. I thought I really had to put up with bad behavior from senior leaders and, had to stay with a company for a long time to be successful. Yes, it is okay to wear yoga pants in the office if you work in tech. Thank you. So my younger peers, my younger bosses, the people around me have taught me that, and I am so, so, so grateful for them.
Love it.
I know. For me, it's just I spend as much time as I can just talking to every generation. It's just how much time I allocate each week just to call people up out of the blue and ask them what they're doing, and can I help you? And every time I ask someone, can I help you, and we go through that discussion, and it wasn't like this, Jerry, maybe easily 10 years ago, maybe. When I turned 50, things actually changed. That was 15 years ago. But the 2 years, one mouth mindset really does work, and it helps to have a 25-year-old here. So my head spins every day, but I have to understand and have to put up with it. I don't put up with it. It's love.
Thank you,
But-
Steve. I appreciate that compliment.
I'm going to come visit you at your home, Brian. Okay. No, but the critical thing here is.
I want your daughter to put that on TikTok.
Okay, fine. But the critical thing here is listen to everything. It may not resonate, it may not click in at the moment, but I play back every conversation. Like when Kayla, when you and I sat together afterwards, I go, what did I do to get her? What did I do that made her so excited about what we talked about? And partially it was, I think, I guess my effusiveness in sharing it, it's how we speak to people really dictates how that relationship is going to go. And if you're excited about something and you know show that excitement, it's going to rub off, and then they're going to share it with other people. And so the critical thing that I learned from everybody is I'm kind of a blockhead, but I've got a blockhead with two ears. So I'm just going to take anything that everybody says. Like Jerry, when I come over and sit with the cousins, I'm listening to everything that they're saying, as kooky as they are. But I am listening to everything that they say. And afterwards I go, I don't do that. I should do that more. And that goes with every generation. You don't have enough time.
One simple thing that I do is if I do read a lot, and I've been doing that for many, many years, but right now, with the ability to read a post, for example, the first time I read a post from somebody that I did not know and I'm not connected to, that I like, I send them a note thanking them, tell them what I learned from them, and ask if they would connect to me on LinkedIn, which means that I'm going to get their stuff in the future.
Yeah.
And I do that consistently, two times a week, maybe. Obviously, I read a lot of posts of people that I already know. And if I have something to say about that, I'll add to that and thank them. But fundamentally, I meet new people, particularly younger folks, because they're more engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just about putting in the effort and asking questions. Like you said, Jerry, we had dinner in Nashville, and I was just asking questions over questions over questions and just consuming all the information of the evolution of recruiting because I was super interested, and you were kindly to share. And I probably kept on asking you maybe a couple questions over and over again, and you were patient and you were willing to give the feedback, give you the scenarios and the information that I was looking for. And everybody on this panel is just like that. They're willing to learn, and then they were willing to give because their heart's in the right place and they want to build something for the future, not just recruiting when they're in this era of, hey, this is my career, I'm done. They want to build this for futures to come. So I love that we have 4 more minutes. If you have a question, put it in the chat of the panel, and we can answer some of those.
I do want to just quickly add a caution though that I'm just thinking of. The digital generation is chronically online, right? And I think a lot of us have also adopted a bit of a chronically online lifestyle as well. And there's pros and cons to that from a recruiting point of view. I get a lot of accolades and it drives a lot of candidate engagement. And I've made many, many hires, including leadership hires, by being just out there and vocal and transparent and just fully myself online. That also comes with a lot of risk. I've personally been, had some dings and some things to overcome. I've seen candidates and job seekers harm their chances because of an overtly transparent, TikTok or something. And so there's a fine line there, and you'll get a lot of attention. You'll get a lot of attaboys and accolades and a lot of people cheering you on. But unless those people are able to convert it to an offer letter, be mindful. And that is your big sister speaking. You're probably not going to listen to me because what do I know? I'm old now. but be mindful of how much you're sharing, when, where, and how.
That's a great point. I really like that.
Thank you.
I would tell you that, I would encourage every person to a couple times a year at their own cost, their own time, go to a place like it could be a local HR meeting, it could be, ERE, it could be HR tech, it could be whatever, but put some money aside because eventually you're going to be speaking there and maybe they'll pay for you. But the point is go to a real place where real people are showing up and spend some time, asking good questions.
Mhm.
Not spending a lot of time talking, just asking good questions and trying to understand what it's like for them. To me, that's the side issue where you always come up with, oh my God, I didn't think of it that way before.
Yeah.
And when you do those things, invariably what's going to happen, no matter how experienced the person is, they're learning too.
Yeah.
And if ever there was a community where knowledge and wisdom and lessons flow both ways, it is this profession. But you have to be willing to give and accept. And that might be the biggest gap, generational gap, is the percentages of those and how those are accomplished. Like Kayla, you're going to be speaking soon. You may not know it yet, but you will. Dan,
I'm scared of falling off the stage now.
we all, we were all scared of falling off the stage that first time.
Yeah, you could do what Steve did for me. He wrapped me in a big thing of bubble wrap, and it was awesome.
Let me tell you what Steve
Perfect.
did for me. Recruit DC. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. First time I ever spoke on a stage. And Levy was, I'm gonna cry because it meant that much to me. You were right in front.
And we were making faces at you, if you remember, too.
Yes, and it was
Sure.
like it. You have been such a good friend and mentor me for so many years, and you made that possible. So thank you. So Kayla, I'll be there for you.
Okay, no, we're all seriously, we're all going to be, and that's what's great about
It
this
was amazing.
about this community is
Yeah.
the people who say
Look
they're
what I
going to
did.
be there with you, we will be there with you. Everybody
Yeah.
in the chat, if you want to get better, if you want to share, just do it. We're there.
Yeah. If I would have fallen, I would have fallen in Levy's lap. So I was good. I was like, it's fine.
Yeah, John and I like John. John wouldn't have minded.
No, he's like, please take care of her. She's freaking out.
Yeah, fine.
Well, I just want to say thank you guys, everybody on this panel that were vulnerable, talk about your experiences for the next generation. We have a ton of things going on at Hire Easy. Check us out. In December 10th, we have our next FRBR conference, and you might see some people here speaking at it. So please connect with us. And please go on social media today and just tell them about your experience of the conversations that we had today. We're busting down barriers no matter what generation you're a part of. And that's how this recruiting community is going to continue to grow for futures to come. So I just want to say thank you so much for everyone joining. And until next time, I will talk to you later.